Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with our podcast, Behind Blackness, sponsored by Repair and Growth. As you know, the reason we've come together as an organization is we want to circulate the dollars in the community, and to do that, we have to raise our consciousness. We have to have a Black conscience. And there is nothing wrong with supporting Black. There is nothing wrong with wanting to support your own. You take care of your own homes. You take care of your children. Why are we not taking care of our communities? We're spending our dollars with other people who are getting filthy rich, who are living the American dream in this country, and they're coming into our communities, and over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years have made so much money in the Black community, but have refused to give back. A community cannot thrive if that dollar is not circulating, and it is not circulating the way it should be. We have many wonderful Black businesses out here, and that's why every Wednesday we're bringing you a Black business here in Chicago. We just have to develop the consciousness and under the need and the necessity to support these businesses, because our Black businesses are going to hire Black people. Our Black businesses are going to do business with Black. We're requesting those businesses that we raise go in and help with their daily operations, their employee training, improving their decor. We're asking that they take 35% of their profits and spend other Black businesses. And it should just be a given. We should not have to come on and beg and ask to do this. This month has been set aside as Black Business Month. We're about Black business every day. Every day of the year, we are Black business. And that is why our organization is working as hard as we are. We're supporting our bookstores. Authors out there should be putting your books in Black bookstores. I know it's maybe more convenient for everyone and sounds better to go to Amazon, and everything that is seemingly good to you or feels good is not good for you. We need people who are going to hire, who are going to inspire, who are going to have a vested interest in our community. That's who we should be spending our dollars with. So we're asking that you support our Black bookstores. We're asking that you support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union, our only Black-owned banking institution left here in Chicago. We ask that you support the Healthy Food Hub, whose proprietor had given up her medical practice because she realized how important it was for us to have control over the distribution of our foods. And how do we learn about these things? From our people. Other people are not going to talk to you about this. So we have to support one another. And we're asking you to go to our website, and we're asking you to support RRGBC. We're asking you to make a donation, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100, whatever you are able to give, and it will help us in our mission in circulating these dollars. We also have an online store where you can purchase from. You can purchase sweatshirts, pants, t-shirts. We have mugs, we have water bottles, caps with our logo on them. So we're asking you to support RRGBC. We're also giving back with a monthly book giveaway. Our bookstores who give a list of must-reads. We have a bookstore every month, and they select the book. We purchase that book and ship that book to you free of charge. All we're asking you to do is to subscribe to our website, and you become eligible to win the book. The book for this month is Lessons for African People by Mark Garvey. And Marcus Garvey talks about how important it is for us to read, because our life experiences are short, but books take you to vast amounts of places and give you vast amounts and ideas. So we're asking you to support our bookstores. Tonight, we have a guest, Robert Irving III, better known as Bobby to his friends. And Bobby is a wonderful person. He is a wonderful jazz pianist. Bobby Irving produced some of the last albums put out by Miles Davis. And he played with Miles Davis, and he learned so much from Miles Davis. And Bobby is known all over the world. And what is so beautiful about Bobby is he is a humble spirit. And I am so happy to know him and to have him as a friend and to have him on this podcast tonight. So without any further commentary, I am going to bring to you our podcast, Black Business, hosted by Gregory, with our featured guest, Robert Irving III. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, for that introduction. Good evening, listening audience. Good evening, folks out there. It is such an honor, such a pleasure, always, to have this golden opportunity to come to you all live over these precious airwaves. And believe me, if I have to tell you this, and it doesn't, or it hasn't resonated in you, what time it is and what must be done, I don't know what else it will take for us as Black people. You could say humanity too, but I want to focus on Black people. And the reason why, because we are the most hated people on the planet. We are the most neglected people on the planet. Yes, self-neglection. Yes, some self-hatred, but hated and neglected by everybody. I mean, from the United States all over the world. And so when you have to plead like Denise was doing to get us in the frame of mind, the mindset to support your own and be yourself, it's a travesty. It is a travesty. And sometimes, God just gonna have to do what he have to do in order for us to move out on what we know is necessary for our own survival. Supporting Black business, there's a lot of Black business in Chicago that you should be supporting. And you should go out of your way to find Black artists, Black bookstores, Black. That's right. And until you start thinking like that, don't ever talk to me about you saved. You believe in liberation. You believe in a revolution. I'm a Christian. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Hebrew. You ain't none of that when you don't respect and honor your own people. You're a hypocrite. And you don't even know what that means. But I had to say that because sometimes the foolishness get on my nerve that we gotta beg our people to get in order. We ain't gonna stop violence because we got everybody else trying to address violence in our community that don't look like us. And that's a damn shame. You waiting on some benevolent white man. You waiting on some government to save you. I mean, it just pissed me off that we could be in a time like this. But you can rest and believe. And I'm going to bring the guests on. I didn't mean to, I did mean it. I ain't going to say I didn't mean it. Because I do mean it. Because I'm speaking from our ancestors. And I know they turn it over in their grave that we have to plead and beg for us to do for self and to support our own. Don't make no sense. But look at what the world is going through right now. Yeah, if you got eyes, then you should be able to see what's happening. And the biggest variant is your fear. That's the number one variant, is fear. But let's bring on the guests. I don't want to put the guests in a bad mood. We might have to hear some music after me going off like that. But I needed to. Brother Irving, it is such an honor, brother. And I'm going to bring on, before, I'm going to talk with you a little while. You know, as much as you want to talk, because I am a person that understands the divine power through the notes of music.
Yeah.
And how it is a cure. It is healing. It is not just fulfilling, but it has some juice in it, brother, that gets us through the night, gets us through the day. And look, man, Brother Irving,
yes, sir.
What God is working tonight. That's what's wrong with us now. Because we listening to poison over the airways, and it's by design that the filth and the garbage that's not even music is played by the enemies to continue to dumb down our people, man. And then we have artists like you and others that is working hard day and night to produce. And when I heard, I think it was the last 9 or 10 albums of the work of nobody like Miles Davis, man. You know, and you worked with Miles Davis. Let me tell you something. You got to be on a whole platoon mountain to work with somebody that deep. I mean, you got to be deep, deep, deep yourself because of the notes that he played, and etc. Just to write it, to compose it, to produce it. So, man, thank you for joining us. As you can see and hear, there's some warriors, man.
You're on a mission.
Huh?
You're on a mission, that's all.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, but thank you, man. So tell us about you, man, and you and your music, and how long have you been a I want to call you more than a musician, because my father was a great musician, and my dad said one of the most profound things I've heard people say in music. They say Oliver sang. They said Oliver. They said, what kind of music do you play? He said, there's only two kind of music. There's only two. He said, there's good music and bad music.
There you go. There you go.
He said, so y'all put labels on it. We didn't tell y'all to call it that. Y'all started calling it that. And I remember Dad and Ike Turner and Miles.
Yeah.
And Mr. Johnson that plays the piano for Berry, the brother Chuck Berry. And they was all in St. Louis, hanging out, and Miles and Daddy said, man, that was the most interesting conversation in the world.
Yes, indeed.
So tell us, man, what's up with you, Brother Irving? How long you been into this, man?
Well, I started at a pretty young age. I was, it was quite fortuitous, actually, because I was living, we grew up at 4737 Kenwood in a house, a big frame house that my dad was renting from a Jewish family. And the house was sold. And if you know that neighborhood, you know the health club is on that property now. So we were just playing.
Wow, I live 3 minutes from there. I said 3. Yeah. I live right down the street from the mosque.
That's right. I know exactly.
Right off. I'm not going to give my address.
No, I wouldn't.
I know I got enemies out there, but
No,
God
no,
got my back. I ain't worried about
not
you.
after that
But
introduction.
go ahead. So you was right there, yo, 47th in Kentwood.
Yeah, 47, and went to Shoesmith Elementary School. And
Yes.
so when the house was sold and we had to move kind of quickly, my dad was a foreman at Reynolds Metal Company, and he made good money, but he was in the process of saving to buy a house. And to facilitate that, we moved into the Robert Taylor homes at 4535 Federal. Now, but that,
Hold on, brother.
yeah.
Hold on now. See now, Will, I don't know. I don't know how we gonna get through this interview
I
just talking
know.
about music, because I'm at 4848 South State,
So,
and one of my offices where I go is right at Coleman.
yep.
Right there.
I walk through the playground every day to go get to Shoesmith.
I went to DuSable. So tell me, Captain Dyer was your.
Well, see, I got there right after the Cap had left. But you know what? The undergrad center is where I went for 2 years. And
DuSable Upper Grade Center, yeah.
And so that was the feeder program for Captain Walter Dyet's high school program. So they would prepare you so that by the time you got to high school, you were already playing 5, 6 instruments fluently. So I still, got the benefit of being at the upper grade center, because, for sure, if we had not moved to Robert Taylor Homes, then there's just no way that I would have probably developed in the way that I did in music. That gave me my initial opportunity. Right across the street from where we lived was Omega Baptist Church, where Jesse Dixon played organ. So I saw that and said, okay, that's what I want to do. My grandmother would come from North Carolina, and she would take us around the corner to Bishop Lewis Henry Ford's church, Bishop Ford, who the highway is named after here, Bishop Ford Highway. Now then my dad would take us to my uncle's church, Bishop Moses Cross. Now at the time, I didn't know that my dad's family and Bishop Cross, that they were all that everybody who played at that church were my cousins and my dad's cousins. So I didn't know that there was music in my family at all. And so, yeah. So by the time we moved south to Chatham, I was already playing. But then when I was playing trombone, trumpet, French horn, about 5 or 6 brass instruments. Then my band teacher at Hirsch High School, where we moved to, George Hunter, he stressed that all the horn players learn piano as a way to basically see your horn from a non-linear perspective. So you can see the shapes of the chords. And I was one of those students that asked a lot of questions. So just fast forwarding, by the time my mother passed and we moved to North Carolina 2 years after that, I could play any song I heard in any key fluently. So that consequently, I was playing professionally, mostly for churches, from age 16.
Wow, that is amazing, brother. That's a heck of a book. Now, I ain't say story. That's a heck of a book.
It is.
You gotta write one, man. I say this all the time. I'm very sensitive when it comes to music, because my dad, his horn, and how daddy was a drummer, at 16 for B.B. King, and then he picked up sax. Daddy started playing his roommate sax. He started picking it up.
Yes.
And then he started playing the xylophones.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, he started going and grabbing artists, singers like Fontella Bass.
Really?
Yeah. Daddy got Fontella when she was 16.
Yeah, I actually had a chance to work with her once.
With Fontella?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, when she was with Chess Records at one time, when she was doing Rescue Me, and Maurice them was the studio.
That's right.
Him and Satterfield, they were the studio musicians.
Yeah, I know all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see that Daddy, I was around a little bit. How did you get involved with Miles?
Well, I told you earlier that we moved to North Carolina after my mother passed. And so it was actually a band that I played in North Carolina with a drummer by the name of Aaron Purdy, who's a cousin of Bernard Purdy. Aaron Purdy was the drummer for Al Green, and he had played for James Brown as well. And he hired another drummer, who was also a vocalist in that band. And that gentleman, his name was Kevin Tynes. And he mentioned to me that he had a cousin in Chicago that played with Ramsey Lewis and was on the Earth, Wind and Fire Sun Goddess tour. So when I moved back to Chicago, I looked her up and ended up marrying into that family. My daughter, who's on, and my ex-wife, shout out. But it was that connection that led me directly to work with Miles, because I went to a party for Debbie Dunn, the keyboard player's wife from the Earth, Wind and Fire. And everybody wanted to sing Earth, Wind and Fire songs. And I had a top 40 band in North Carolina that knew all of those songs. And so consequently, Miles Davis's nephew was there. He heard me, and I got hired. And so we would rehearse in the basement of Miles' sister's home in Chicago. And Miles would call in over the phone. And although he had not played himself for about 5 years, maybe 6, he was very keenly interested in what we were doing as these young musicians. I was about 25 or so, 24. Wow. And so then Tom 84 from Earth, Wind and Fire took us in the studio, and we recorded the demo for Maurice White to check out. However, Miles heard it first, and it was a song of mine entitled Space that he just kept calling and wanted to hear it over and over again over the phone. Finally, we sent him a cassette. And then he asked us to come to New York and record that one song. And that turned into about a 3-month workshop there, developing what became The Man with the Horn, his comeback album. So we were instrumental in his comeback.
Wow, man. I'm telling you, this is a dream come true kind of book.
It is. And actually, I'm writing it. I am writing it, yeah.
I know you have to be, because this is an amazing story. And you were with Miles. How many of his albums were you on?
So I recorded The Man with the Horn as a writer. Wrote the title track, The Man with the Horn, with Randy Hall, and a couple of other songs that I had part in. But then I came back and I became his producer. So I produced his last 2 Columbia projects, which were Decoy and You're Under Arrest.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was around that time that I was also the musical director for his bands. For about 5 years, I was a musical director. So the entire collaboration period was about 9 years.
Wow, you familiar with Brother Phil Coran, right?
Absolutely, we were very close. He was my buddy.
Yeah, because Phil's sons, they pretty good in,
absolutely.
Them little brothers can go.
Oh, yeah.
Before I heard Maurice White, I'm just telling you, it was Phil Coran. He had that sound.
Yes. Yep. Well, that's where it came from. That's where the Earth, Wind and Fire sound emanated from. It was Phil Coran.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a pleasure really to work so closely with him and to really understand philosophically where he was coming from. Because as you talked about earlier, the spiritual essence of the music, he emphasized that very much. And in fact, he had played with Sun Ra before that. But the dissonance of the music with Sun Ra was not conducive to opening up that, what Phil Coran called the trance state, to put you into the trance. The same kind of trance that happens when you go to a Muntu concert and the African drums are playing. And even though nobody's singing, it's like you hear the ancestors singing, and people go into that trance state. And so I often like to talk about, in relation to that, the fact that in ancient India, that all of the musicians were priests, and the priests were musicians. And part of their job was to go around the villages and tune all the instruments, make sure all the instruments were in the same tuning. Because if they got out of tune, then that was going to reflect in the dissonance within society. So if you multiply that times, millions, right now we're living in that kind of cacophony and dissonance in terms of the frequency that's on the planet. So
Nice,
yeah.
nice. How many instruments do you play?
Well, I no longer play the brass instruments. I still own a trombone and a euphonium, which is like a baritone horn. And I picked it up about a year ago, tried to buzz on the mouthpiece and get my embouchure back again, but I gave up. But I play guitar and I play piano now. Those are my main. And every once in a while, I love percussion. Piano is actually a percussion instrument, technically. So I'm a percussionist at heart, like Miles was. He was a rhythm guy at heart.
Oh, wow. And so I understand you paint?
Yeah, so that's an interesting.
But what did Miles have something to do with that?
In a way. So back in, I'd say about my last year was 88 with Miles. So about 87 or so, we were at the Essex house. He had moved into the Essex house after he and Cicely separated. And he was painting, oil painting. He had about 5 canvases while one was drying. He was tweaking another one. And I was working on some music on the piano there. And he said to me, he said, Bobby, you should try painting because it's a painting is music that you can see, and music is a painting that you can hear. And I said, whoa.
You took it out. That's all I can say.
He put something on my head. And, he was a gourmet cook, and we cooked meals together sometimes. And so
Miles could cook?
Yeah, oh yeah, he could cook, he could burn. I mean, like gourmet, like bouillabaisse and,
I mean, to have that kind of intimate relationship with somebody so deep is amazing to me.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing to me because, when you just think about some of the things that Cicely had to say, and, a lot of people don't understand, and we have to be real careful of what we allow the media, how they paint.
Absolutely.
Let's use that word. How they paint.
You paint, yeah.
The images of Black men, and they always because I'm gonna just tell people this. I knew Ike, sat down, and he wasn't all a monster.
That's right.
That man was not all a monster.
Yeah, well, people talk about Miles, being rough and everything, rugged. But as you know, it's like being behind the stage with the Wizard of Oz, and he's back there, working the levers and the big image up on the screen. People are terrified, but he's just a little man behind the screen, working levers. And that's the way Miles was, and I would imagine Ike in many ways. And in fact, I know someone who worked with Ike very closely, who never ever, a woman actually, who never ever had any kind of problems.
Yeah, well, they always make it one-sided, and when you look at what they did, I know nobody's perfect with Brother Michael, who's a genius, and Prince, and you look at the images, man, they have no mercy on Black men and women. In the end, it's the same people, man. But look, a brother like you, and we already know, Brother Irving, it's a sad state of affairs. In terms of the school system and the music.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that? I mean, does it bother you when you realize the garbage? I mean, you can only find a few schools that have programs.
Well, I'm aware of how it evolved because, of course, when I came up, music was prolific in the schools, and the schools were turning out incredible people. And there are a few exceptions even now, but they're very, very few. But we know that it all began during the Reagan administration. He came in talking about, trickle down, tax cuts and everything. And the Federal Reserve said, okay, how are you going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for government? And of course, he was left with cutting programs And the fact that he was an actor, you know, I was very disappointed that he would not have been more sensitive to the cause of the arts and the importance of the arts. But in many ways, it was by design. And so
That's
music
right.
got taken out of the program, out of the schools. But think about it, as a result, that it coincided, juxtaposed with the advent of new technology for sampling music. And so kids who couldn't play music now got a sampler and they sample music. And they developed this thing that became hip hop, which became a worldwide industry. Of course, it's been co-opted and dominated and controlled by those who didn't
That's right.
create it. But nevertheless, it stood alongside of jazz and gospel in Europe and in Asia as American created art forms that were respected and learned not only in college but in high school. It was required learning in Europe for you to. And the reason I know it is because I would go to Europe and I would be encountered by young kids who would bring every album that I've ever done for my autograph. And I said, "What? Wow, they really know." And our kids don't even know that Miles Davis died in '91. And you know, and so Miles, when he was on his deathbed, it was 30 years ago this year. One of his last requests from us was, "Never let my name die." And about maybe 5 years ago, there was a professor at Columbia. He told me, he said, "I asked a show of hands for people who knew the name of Miles Davis. Out of about 50 students, there were only 4."
And
And
see, and that's crazy.
yeah,
Not only should they know Miles, they got to know you. They got to know others. They got to know my dad. Some of them in St. Louis know Daddy. A lot of people. But look, how do we save this generation, man, that is so misguided and don't understand the history, and they don't understand all of that it takes to keep a man like Miles' name alive and well, yours and Dad's and so many others. What do you advise to young people today? And do you get an opportunity to go before young artists and talk to them?
well, yeah, because you know I'm a mentor with the Jazz Institute of Chicago. So when I talk about the exceptions to the rule, those kids are the exception for sure, because they wouldn't be there unless they were not prepared, unless they had been educated, unless they've been exposed. And part of the design of the program is not only for the musicians to have that experience, but for them to impact their peers as the future audience for the music. Because if there's no audience for the music, then there is no outlet for the music to be played, to be performed. So it starts with education. And so if they're not doing it, if the schools aren't doing it, then we have to take it on. I've been a long time proponent of every musician, every jazz musician, for example, to adopt one musician and teach them and stay with them in whatever their needs are. If they need to buy an instrument, to help them to facilitate that. But that's kind of the only way it's going to happen. I was teaching up in Lake Forest back in 2004. I was an adjunct substitute teacher at Lake Forest High School, and it was just a combo class, you know. And the teacher out there, or the head teacher for the music program, knowing who I was, said, "You know, we've got a lot of classical students here who wanted to learn jazz." And that was perfect for me because I understood where they were. They had the technical expertise, but they couldn't get off the paper. They had to read everything that they played. So I developed a system by which I could instruct them, and they really just went fast. But the money didn't come from the school. It came from the parents. I got a check from the parents So we have to
Wow.
invest in our people. We can't rely on a system to do it. The
Teach,
system is not set up to do
teach.
it, and
Ooh,
so we have to take over.
look, who was some of, I know Miles is one, but name some of the other artists that you work with that have been absolutely, um, I mean, we know they're talented, so we don't have to get into that, but you can say it if you want.
Mhm.
But just interesting human beings that you felt impacted your life and they were really deep outside of, their music. Who are some of the other musicians?
Oh, there are countless, just countless. Wallace Roney, whom we just recently lost, just a brilliant musician, very deep thinker, deep composer. He was a painter too, as well. Dr. Donald Byrd, the
Oh
Black
man,
I was the musical director for him, and he'd come here and we in the first hour of the rehearsal was,
flight time.
yeah, it was the first hour of any rehearsal was going to be Dr. Bird just educating us of some new things that he learned and just sharing. He just sharing. He
So
was,
you played with Dr. Bird?
yeah. I was MD, a musical director for him as well.
Wow.
Great fortune.
Were
So
you on that album with Flight Time or
no.
no?
So I never recorded with him. I only just worked with him in the later years when he had done everything, And let me just interject. Dr. Bird, if you don't know this, he was the first chair of the very first musical program at um, in DC, the university in
Right,
DC,
right,
the
right.
Black University. What is it?
Not Howard.
Howard. They have Howard.
No, was it Howard? Okay.
And Howard. And so then the way that came about, Howard was originally a school that only focused on European classical music. And you could not even play jazz in the halls, in the practice room without getting kicked out of the school. So that's a black college, but that was focused on the European way. And Richard Smallwood, who we all know as like the father of contemporary gospel music, anthem style, actually staged a sit-in at Howard with demands for a jazz program and a gospel program. And I think it lasted 1 or 2 months. And out of that, Dr. Donald Byrd was hired as the first chair. And they got a gospel ensemble.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah. So I would add him to the list. There's so many. Dwight McKee, who I work very closely with, is a brilliant social scientist and musician, writer. He was responsible for the careers of the Emotions. BB and CC Wining's manager, he mentored him. He mentored Richard Smallwood. He was a manager for Edwin Hawkins, and on and on.
That's a slew, and a man like you that still have the fire and the desire and this necessary, I call it divine passion for music.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have knowing the importance of music, because music is connected to math,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
the notes and etc. Do you have any contacts whatsoever with the Chicago Public Schools in terms of trying to get that whole music? Because we failed with Black History. Let
Yeah.
me just
Yeah.
tell you, and that was a joke, and it still is a joke because it is not sincere. But do you have any contacts whatsoever with CPS?
Well, only ancillary contacts through the Jazz Institute because they do programs that are interfacing with those programs. It's that whole thing could be a lifelong focus because it's just there's so much work to be done. There's just so much, and so my chosen way has been as a mentor, um, and and not only do I mentor the kids in music, but in music business, production, publishing, the business side of things that are important for them as well, because this is the music business. And so kids are now at Columbia, for example, learning recording engineering, arranging. My nephew in North Carolina is at an art school in high school, and he's already doing Pro Tools. He's doing film video production. He's mixing. He's having to arrange. So there are these exceptions, and those are going to be sort of the hopefully the ones.
Hey, here's a class, Brother Irving, and here's a class. I got one called Protect Your Jewel. How to protect your jewel and not sell your masters. And the business side, going back to the business side, what's the future, brother? What do you see? What do you see? I mean, I know you said the students there, the students at it was the other group of students that you and I had an opportunity to address. But what future do you see in music, and what do you strongly recommend for young people with talent and etc.? Because the business side cripples our people, and many of our young people who are talented, they're starving artists.
That's true. That's true. So there's the whole idea of the starving artist. I worked in the insurance business for the first 3 years of my career, and I had a top 40 band concurrent to that. But and then in college, I chose business administration as a focus because I was already playing professionally, and I wanted to learn enough to, as an entrepreneur within music, to be able to function and thrive. And from that time, I've not worked for a corporation. I've not worked for anyone except myself. So the key is learning all of the aspects of your own craft, first of all, being the best that you can possibly be at your basic craft. But just because a doctor is a good doctor, it doesn't mean that they're going to know how to run their office if they don't have business expertise. So you got to get involved with educating yourself about business. The music business has become very complex. There has been basically the record industry has decimated itself. It's imploded. Wow. To give you an example, when I first started, and you asking me a question about the future, so I'm giving you a little bit of the past so that we can see what the potential for the future is.
Brother. Teach.
And so when my album first came out, my first album on Polygram Records.
What was the name of it?
It was Midnight Dream. Midnight Dream. Midnight Dream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it had a lot of great artists in it. John Schofield, Daryl Jones, the bass player, drummer from Manhattan Transfer, and on and on. So, but the point is, when the album came out, it came out as a cassette, a vinyl, and as a CD. Now, why is that significant? Because at that time, cassette tapes were 80% of the market. Vinyl albums were maybe about 10%, and CDs were minuscule, 10% probably.
Wow.
So fast forward 10 years from there, albums were gone, vinyl was gone, and cassettes were gone. And it was all about CDs. Now, the irony about that is cassettes and albums actually had a wider frequency range and better quality than CDs, because CDs, the digital technology shaves off the highs and the lows. So now we're kind of dumbed down our quality of listening. And then 90% of the market was CDs. Now fast forward another 10 years.
Wow.
And CDs are gone, and MP3 downloads. MP3s are the lowest quality possible for listening to music, but yet we're accepting it, and we're listening at a lower quality level. And now people are not even downloading anymore. Why? Because they're streaming. Everybody can get it for free, more or less, as a subscriber, or if you want to listen to ads. Now, I want to juxtapose this with a story. In 1986, I was in Yugoslavia, the old Yugoslavia before it was broken up into the 4 countries that it is, Slovenia and so on. And I went to a record shop, and it was a very dingy looking place in the basement, and they had all these record bins, and there were albums, vinyl albums. And you could go and select an album, and then when you found something that you liked, you didn't buy the album, you took it to the counter, and they made a cassette for you. You had to come back and get your cassette. Now that meant that the artist wasn't getting paid, the royalties weren't getting paid for the writers, the publisher were not making any money. That was just music being given away. I thought that was so archaic, but guess what? That's where we are today.
Wow. Now check that out. Look, brother, Robert, I mean, man, we need 2-3 sessions with you. This is way too short.
Yeah, indeed.
And I know we didn't start on time.
Yeah.
But man, I keep thinking about these artists that die broke.
Yeah.
And this is why. I mean, you could tell us I'm sure there's irresponsibility on some people, but on the other hand, when it comes to the royalties, you know, and I'm sure, God willing, you're getting some royalties,
yes, indeed.
you know, from the music that you have you written, and you know, the stuff that you produced,
yes,
and etc. But we got a few more minutes, man, and I want you to tell us, what are some of the goals that you have as it relates to this conversation and anything else that, you know, we want to pull out as much as we can from you. But I know just one question here and there will trigger, you know, things already burning inside of you. But what you know, you talked about Miles. I want to talk about your legacy. And we don't want to forget you. What is it that you would like for us to do now with you, and the mission to fix what's wrong with music, the art, and etc., but your legacy, your goals, as you continue to live, what is it?
Yeah, so I appreciate you asking that question. That's what I'm about, is legacy building for myself and for the artists that surround me, because it's important. Posterity, we lost a bunch of piano players, Willie Pickens, Muhal Richard Abrams, Coco Bronson, a long list, at least 5 or 6 in the last 3 years.
Wow.
And so those are people who were my peers and whose shoulders I stood on. So I'm about preserving those legacies, as well as establishing and continuing to establish my own. And I'm doing that in a couple of ways. One is through Sonic Portraits Jazz, which is, there's a label website, sonicportraitsjazz.com. We have about 6 or 7 different projects that are for sale on there, but particularly one that was just released last Friday, Art of Protest. And we will
Art of Protest.
Art of Protest. So Art of Protest, not with the.
Oh, really? Where can we find that?
You can find it at sonicportraitsjazz.com.
Can we put that up?
You can, yeah.
Simon can put it up.
Okay.
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, so https://sonicportraitsjazz.com. So it's a boutique label that is building, and over the next year we plan to have about 10 various releases on the label, a lot of it reissue. So that's one way that you can support. You can go there and you can see what's being updated, what's new, what's coming. We try to keep.
Hold your point right there. Simon, can you bring in Doris and bring in Denise as we close out this show, and bring in Doris? I mean, look, you know, I was speaking for Doris earlier when I was hammering about just the fact that Denise comes on the show and what an appeal for us to support our own people, bookstores, business, you know, etc. Um, it's just sad. But when we have brothers like you that's still here,
Mm,
and you got so much to offer to the world, we have to get the word out. We have to be your voice, your advocate. Because if we're not each other's advocate, brother Irvin, none of it makes sense whatsoever. It
yeah.
ain't no way to fix what's wrong. We can talk till we blue black in the face, and it's like preaching to the choir. We got to do the work. And having you on today is a huge honor for RRGBC, and the business part of what you do and what you've already told many of our listening audience, and people could play this back again. But Doris and Denise, um, they know how important it is, and the producer Simon, that we lift up our great artists, our great business people, our great minds, and where they belong.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't do it, who gonna do it? There's no way for it to be done. Forget about it. So thank you, man, for coming on. And I'm sure Doris or Denise have a comment. Doris, anything you'd like to
Yeah, you,
say
Robert,
to
thank
the
you so
brother?
much for being on our podcast. And when I first came to Chicago, my first teaching job was at Walter Diet Middle School. And,
Wow.
and they had a very good music program there. And as you know, all of this was systematically destroyed.
Absolutely.
It was
Absolutely.
by design. And do you have young artists following you, young artists we can say that are coming after you? Because it's so important that we groom these young people so that they can go in your legacy. So
Yeah.
do you have any following you?
Well, so I like to start with my own progeny. My daughter Sharon Irving, my
Okay.
son Jeremiah J.
Well,
They're both producing really just incredible things. My nephew Gabriel Irving in North Carolina, he's won
okay.
the national award for the PTA for creativity 2 years in a row. So starting with them, but then there are a lot of my mentees who are already going on to do great things. John
Mhm.
uh, uh, Foster, who's started off as a student, he's now actually working for the Jazz Institute itself. So he's like a liaison for me for a lot of things that I need in terms of resources, finding young musicians. Irving Pierce, just a long list of
Oh,
young people.
nice.
You know
Nice.
what? Maybe we can work with you and bring your children and artists on to our show so they can talk about you and what they're doing to keep your legacy and just music, black music going in general. So maybe
Yeah,
we can work with you to do that.
They're
yeah,
gonna have to play, Doris. They ain't gonna be able to. I don't want to just hear no talking now. They're gonna have to have their
Oh yeah,
instruments
well, we can find
here.
some time to do that. Yeah,
Right, right. It's like we just had an interview with a brother with a vegan restaurant. We wasn't there with him. We wanted some food.
lots of food.
But
because
go
you know
ahead.
Well,
when
you
young
know,
people see when young people see other young people, that can
That's
be
right.
very encouraging. So we want to work with you on doing that.
Okay, I would love to. I would love to. That's part of what I do.
well,
I
I
hope
would
you can
just
help us break that curse, man.
Yes.
Well, I would just like to say I want to thank Bobby for coming on. I have known Bobby down through the years, and Bobby has always worked with the young people. He's been very dedicated. He worked with Phil Coran. Phil Coran had a free music program
Mhm.
over at, remember the church? over there on King Drive, where people were coming. He was trying to teach the jazz music.
No, on State Street, on State, 48th and State. That's
Yeah,
where the
yeah, it
Black
was on
Panthers.
48th and
That's
State,
where
and
That's right.
Bobby was involved with that, and I know all about the Jazz Institute. He's been very much involved. My daughter played with him, and he's such a humble person, you know, and so willing to help. And then the young man that has autism, I forget his name, Bobby,
The pianist.
the pianist.
He's,
Yep.
yeah, he's on his way to Juilliard tomorrow.
Okay, okay, and Bobby,
Yeah,
yeah,
Dr. King.
Bobby has mentored him, and Bobby gives master classes, and I mean, Bobby, you talk about heavy. Bobby is very deep, you know, into this music,
Yeah,
and
and that's why
our intro music that we have was Bobby wrote that, and he allowed us to use that for
Yeah,
is that
our
right?
podcast about
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, brother Bobby,
it-
let me just tell you, man, you are more than just an artist, man, and more than just a mentor. You could be the link that helps save many of our children, man, because music contains the wildest beast that's in us. Music is the tamer. And that's why they got our people listening to the garbage that triggers our young people. And they make sure, as you said earlier, by design,
That design, yeah.
because that's the garbage that they're being fed daily, man. But thank you.
Yep.
Again.
thank you, Bobby. Enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
y'all. And
And I want to say, I want to give Bobby one more credit here. The very first interview we had, it wasn't a podcast, it was an interview. I went out and did an interview with Brother Yoel, and the video wouldn't transfer and to the computer. And so I redid it again, and Bobby did all of the editing for that first video, and that was an enormous amount of work, but he did it to help, you know, lending a hand. And that's what we have to do. We have to be willing to help one another, and Bobby is definitely willing to do that, and I am so appreciative and so thankful for you and all of your efforts
And Bobby,
and
this is
Thank you
support,
again.
and your
Bobby.
support of RRGBC, because he's very supportive of our
Yeah.
organization.
And Bobby, this
Yes.
is a movement, not a moment.
That's right. That's right.
Everything that we do is about a movement.
Yeah.
And so
That's
anybody that's listening to this show, be crystal clear that we know we are at war in every category of our existence. And we got to be strong, and we got to stop sugarcoating and watering down what it is that's in our way besides us not
That's right.
seeing the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
But man, you are amazing. So
Thank
peace
you.
and love, brother.
Peace and love. And if I may, I just want to give a plug. On Saturday, all day Saturday is the Bronzeville Jazz and Music Festival Unity Concert on 51st and King Drive. And I will be headlining, closing out the
Beautiful.
festival. I think Maggie Brown is and her sister are going to be on the festival. But we will be performing at about 9 o'clock. My daughter will be performing with me, Sharon Irving. So if you get a chance to come out, you will not regret it.
Okay, thank you, Bobby.
All right.
Thank you. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Thank you all.
Yeah, that was a good show. Good show.
Yep. That was a good show.
Yeah, and I'm on
We
my
have to
way
have
to
him
bed. I am so tired, guys. I wish I could chit chat. I've had a crazy day. I was about to cancel earlier and call and say somebody else got to do the show because I got a lot going on. But you are
Well, I'm glad you didn't.
yeah, well, you know, you have
Because I had a crazy day. I told Doris I'm working at a new school now. I'm back to work and full time. And
I've been back the whole summer.
Yeah, I've been off. Well, I've been.
And you got to understand,
Yep.
working for CPS is the worst thing in the world right now, because CPS is, I mean, you know, I have to say this, even if it's live, it's bad because our babies are missing.
Oh, we supposed to turn on the outro, y'all. Go ahead, Simon.
We got to get our babies. We got to go get our babies. Working for any school system.